Well, we are going to get started. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Virtual Voices. I'm Elizabeth Pruch. I have the pleasure of working with the Leadership Foundation and ensuring our alumni stay connected, which is exactly why we started the Virtual Voices series in response to COVID. This was a way for us to keep our alumni engaged and informed on what's going on in our community surrounding COVID. We've asked leaders from all industries that have been impacted by COVID-19 to share their perspectives, their knowledge, and more importantly, their leadership lessons, because this is an interesting time. So today's focus is around events and hospitality, an industry that's certainly been hit hard by what's going on. And so we've got some amazing folks with us today to share some of their lessons and perspectives. Before I introduce them, though, I want to just mention a few housekeeping pieces. Megan Vivier will be managing this call from the technical perspective. So if you have any issues, you can private message her. I do recommend that you guys put your screens onto speaker view. You can find that in the upper right-hand corner. I'm sure we're all well-versed in Zoom by now. And also, of course, we'll keep everybody on mute to just ensure quality experience. We'll unmute you if you have a question, or you can unmute yourself as well. I will be using the chat feature to manage any questions you might have. So if you have a question as we go along, the more questions, the better. Just type them into the chat feature, and I will call on you one by one to ask those questions of our speakers. We are recording this session, so smile big, and you can find this afterwards on our website. We are very excited for our speakers today, and please allow me to just read a quick bio for each of them, and then we're going to start with asking each of them a question, and then we're just going to open this up, open forum. If you all have questions, feel free to type those in. Otherwise, I will keep the conversation going. But let me start with Jeremy Brunson. Jeremy is the president of Occasions Catering, one of Denver's largest catering companies, which he has owned since 2008. Prior to his hospitality work, Jeremy worked in government and politics in the technology sector for 20 years. How you made that switch, I don't know, but good on you, Jeremy. That's impressive. He's a proud 2009 LD alum, which I saw you said hi to all your fellow alums there in the chat feature. And he stays very active in community work, most recently helping to launch the Colorado Event Alliance with his co-panelist, Nicole Marsh. They're going to talk a lot more about that as well. Jeremy will also celebrate his 25th wedding anniversary in a few weeks with his wife, Kristen, and their parents to young adult women, Ryan and Madeline. Congratulations on 25 years, you guys. Next up, I want to tell you about Nicole. Nicole Marsh, a 20-year meeting and event industry veteran. Nicole leads Imprint Events Group, day-to-day operations, managing live and now, of course, virtual events, all the way from 10 to 10,000 employees. She recently received many industry honors, including the ADME International's prestigious DMC Professional of the Year, and has also been inducted in the Colorado Meeting and Events Magazine Hall of Fame as Best Meeting Professional, which is a great honor because there are a lot of folks in this industry, so kudos to you. Nicole and her husband, Brad, stay active with their 4 children, Owen, 16, 11-year-old triplets. That's amazing. Peyton, Gavin, and Dalton. Kudos to you. I used to want twins until I had my first daughter, and then I was like, wait a minute, maybe I don't. And then last but not least, we have John Schagel. John's passion has been hospitality since he can remember. His path in the industry has continued on to have several successful restaurants, one of which we all know is the founder of Snooze AM Eatery, and the newly opened Adamo, a wine bar, and I was just telling him I'm gonna order some lasagna from there soon. Opening the Snooze concept was his dream to have done by the age of 30, followed by his dream of living abroad at age 40. And he chose Piedmont in Italy, where wine, food, and hospitality were on these epic levels. And he brought that all back to Denver, his native hometown, by completing this whole dream with the Adamo concept and sharing some of those best times in Italy here in Denver. So we're glad to have part of Italy here, John. And thank you for one of everybody's favorite breakfast spots for Snooze. I am sure all very excited to get back to that. So let's get started, you guys. Again, questions, feel free to put those in the chat box, and I will call on you to ask those out loud yourself. Jeremy, I want to start with you with a question. You know, if you can be really vulnerable with us and just talk to us about the harsh realities of how the catering world has just been completely rocked by COVID. And if you would also follow it up by just talking a little bit about the Colorado Event Alliance, because I know that came as a result of COVID.
Sure. Well, I'm comfortable being vulnerable, and thank you so much for having me here today, and thank you for everyone for taking this time to focus on the hospitality industry, which has really been devastated by the pandemic. My company, Occasions Catering, is celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. On February 26th, we threw an amazing celebration party. Some of you on the call were there. Nicole was a part in helping to put the party on. We had 350 guests packed shoulder to shoulder in a great new venue, and we're really launching the next 50 years of our business in Denver. And just over 2 weeks later, we were completely shut down. My second to last event I attended was yours, Elizabeth, and with the Leader of the Year luncheon, and then one that we catered on the 14th of March. And at this point, there is still no guidance in Colorado on when even 10 people are allowed to gather. So we honestly have almost no revenue at this point, and not really foreseeable prospects for revenue. In February, we had about 150 employees, and now we have around 10. One of our hallmarks at Occasions is our extremely low turnover rate. Among caterers, the tenure of our team is just unheard of, and it takes tremendous intention and culture building to create a hospitality workplace that people don't choose to leave. So it was especially painful to have to furlough almost everyone in mid-March. Also, caterers earn about 3/4 of their annual revenue and almost all of their profits between mid-April and mid-October, which is the big season here, as you know. We were fortunate to get PPP money in the first round, but we are not spending it. The program is basically useless as a benefit to companies like ours, and it wouldn't do much good for most of our employees either. Until they can forecast revenues and justify expenses commensurate with pre-COVID days, companies need to preserve their cash regardless of its source. The impact of COVID on catering, particularly in a booming economy like the pre-COVID Denver days, is about as night and day as you can imagine. And what we've realized over the last 8 weeks is that for events and catering, this is not just a mere pause in operations like has befallen, even in a dramatic way, many businesses. It's a total reset for us. So when life gives you lemons, you make a Hawaiian shirt out of them, maybe some lemonade. And I really want to tell you how we've been true to our culture in this extraordinary time. One of the first things we did was start a family meal program, which is frozen menu items, delicious occasions food. It was started primarily as a way to utilize the inventory that we had accumulated as we were getting ready for a very busy late March. But what we're doing with that is, first, we're supporting our employees. All the gratuities that we generate from the family meal program go directly each week to one person who is really struggling and unable to work from our team. And we're also supporting our nonprofit partners. Each week we select one of those partners to get 10% of all of our food sales. And we get the opportunity through that to promote them on social media and stay connected to them. So to a certain extent, that family meal program is about how you stay relevant during a time when you can't do your normal business. We are talking with our team as often and as transparently as we can about what we're learning externally in the world that we can't control, and the decisions and things that we're talking about doing internally, so that we are keeping everybody engaged as actively as we can. And we're taking a hard look at ourselves, and this has been, I think, the most rewarding and also most challenging part. All the people, all the things that we didn't have time to worry about when we were so busy and growing, to identify the changes we need to make to align what we do around our culture, our vision, and our goals. And while we desperately want to get back to work when we can and when it's safe to do so, we are genuinely putting the safety of our employees first, along with the safety of our guests and of the community at large. We think of ourselves first as being a member of the community, and second as a business that needs to focus on itself. So with that in mind, I'm proud to be a founding board member, along with my friend Nicole Marsh from Imprint Events, of the Colorado Event Alliance. This organization was formed for one reason: because the employees in our industry are really hurting and no one is coming to help them. It's unlike most industries in terms of the fact that that we're just not on people's radar. When you're thinking about people who need help, your banquet server, the person who runs cables to the speakers at the ballroom of the hotel, the people who are doing floral arrangements in the warehouses, those kinds of things, those are not the primary focus and top priorities that people are thinking about. So we need to get on the radar of compassionate donors, celebrities, regulators, elected officials, the people who can make a difference in our employees' lives. The CEA will raise awareness and money on behalf of our industry's employees so that we can help them when they need it most. It could be something on a very, very grand scale like a pandemic, or it could be a fire or an injury or an illness where an individual just needs help. So the contributions that we're soliciting will support direct assistance to displaced industry employees, and know that you can donate online at www.coeventalliance.org. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jeremy. I think staying relevant is so important, and the fact that you can ensure your people and the community are first during such a tough time, I think is very honorable. It's how we should be leading, but it's a very tough way to lead, right? It makes it difficult. And we did put that link in. Thank you, Nicole, for putting this in the chat feature so you guys can donate. That's what we do as leaders, right? We help out. Nicole, I want to ask you a question also. Can you paint us a picture of what your company and your industry as a whole looked like in mid-March when all this hit? I mean, Jeremy referenced the last time I saw most anybody face-to-face was at our large 750-person luncheon on March 13th, and after that, everything stopped, right? And so what did it look like for you guys and for the events industry, and how were you able to lead your team through that initial unknown?
I would say, very, very similar to, what Jeremy mentioned. We had come off of, record January, February for us as a company, leading into what was, planning to be a record year, and very different from, I would say, the recession in 08. Here, the faucet just got turned off. It wasn't that things slowed down, and stayed at a level. It just went completely dry. The last event that I remember attending similarly was the Meetings Industry Council of Colorado, big trade show at the Colorado Convention Center, probably 1,200 attendees. And it was just an odd time where you knew something was coming, but yet it was still hugs and handshakes and such that, it was looming, but the city, and the state had not been shut down yet. And in the hospitality industry, we are all about relationships. It is all, like I said, friends and hugs and, networking and groups meeting. And again, to have the whole thing dry up overnight, I think is still a little bit surreal. Similarly, we went through an initial round of layoffs. I like to say, cut potentially a little bit of fat. The next round hurt even more when you're cutting into muscle, in terms of, that next group of people that are truly, active and a vital part within the company. And potentially still looking at another round where I would say it's, cutting into the bone of the company. So we have locations here in Colorado, as well as Las Vegas and Orlando. We had 46 employees and we're down just under 20 currently. We have been able to, the new word is pivot as well. We had started a digital division of our company about 8 months ago. So we are in the process of expanding on that digital division and being able to offer virtual events and services, surrounding video, virtual entertainment, virtual meetings and such, but it is at such a small proportion, to what we have, had been doing in the past. Across our destinations, we're looking at, maybe one event every other week at this point in time, and hopefully ramping up as people, switch to this type of meeting, where we probably had 40 to 50 events a week across our destinations with the entertainment component as well as the meeting and events across destinations. So it has been, a challenge for us for sure. And I think the piece that has been you know, hard as a leader is leading with honesty and really saying, we don't know. I mean, we pride ourselves in being business owners that, you know, we know everything. In this case, we don't know. We haven't seen the light at the end of the tunnel. We don't know what's going to happen. I can't tell an employee that they should go ahead and sign you know, another lease because I don't know that they'll have a job, you know, in a month or 2 months or whatever until we can see that things are coming back. It's, you know, it's hard to share, but I think that honesty that you can, you know, you're walking potentially in the same shoes as your team and as your employees, and to walk along with them and to navigate it and just be honest with them, as we found, you know, at the best approach. Transparency in terms of, as we look to rebudget, we're sharing with them, here's what it looks like. There's a potential that we could have nothing, you know, between now and the end of the year. We don't know if it's going to come back. Until, you know, like Jeremy mentioned, until gatherings are legal above 10 people or 50 people. But even, you know, with the size and scope of things that we do, even if they allow it to come back, do people feel comfortable, you know, meeting in those group sizes, and what we're calling it pandemic planning protocols. You know, what protocols are we doing as the event industry to make sure people feel safe and social distance at events? And then do they have the same impact in ROI, you know, for those that are throwing those events? So lots to think about and navigate in our world, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly different in your industry when a lot of the world is talking about reopening and what guidelines there are right now for that. There's still so much unknown in what you're doing. And like you mentioned, it's the psychological side of things too. It's, even if we're allowed to, will people be willing and able to, or interested in doing that? So you talked a little bit about virtual meetings. I know I'll have some questions about that later. I'm sure many of us are curious about what virtual events look like these days. But John, I want to ask you a question. And again, for those of you on the audience, if you have questions, please do put them in the chat box. But John, you run a very successful snooze eatery and had recently opened up Adamo, I think just months or so before this all started. Talk to us about what the current situation looks like for your restaurants, and how have you adjusted to stay afloat? I know you've gotten creative in some ways. Talk to us about what that looks like.
The adjustments for snooze, I mean, gosh, just to echo what my peers have just said, it's been a complete night and day situation. I would have told you 6 months ago, I saw the strongest headwinds I've ever seen in the restaurant business. Competitive labor pool was hardest I've ever seen. We've had 7 years of rising construction costs. Rent is higher than I've ever seen in Denver. TI dollars are less and less, and you were just trying to figure out how to make those margins work. And those are all totally forgotten at this point. So on March 15th, Snooze had 41 restaurants up and running in 5 different markets. We had 10 leases signed to open up another 10 this year. And then within a 2-week period, we laid off 1,800 of our 2,200 employees. We shut down 10 restaurants while the cities went dark. And we're surviving now on 26 restaurants doing curbside service. That's the Snooze side. We've opened up 2 restaurants in Texas right now at 25%. We've got 2 restaurants in Arizona open right now at 50%. We took a probably 70 to 80% revenue hits, you know, overnight. Hence the furlough and the layoffs from everybody hourly all the way up to probably 60 to 70% of our mothership, which is our corporate office, but a cooler name. And so we're still don't know what that's gonna look like. We, like Jeremy, got the PP money on the first round for Snooze. We look at that as a loan for 2 years. Basically, we'll use it for the same thing, payroll, utilities, and whatnot. But it's bringing back a group of employees to stand around and look at each other is just going to put it back on unemployment, I think, in 8 more weeks. So we struggle with that. We have a lot of work that we're trying to do with the NRA to push those PPP numbers back to 16 weeks or perhaps even toward the end of the year. And we hope that that'll actually happen, and that will be a moment of breath, fresh air. We have 4 restaurants at Snooze that have just been completely built out and haven't even been opened. So that's hard. The other 8 restaurants that were kind of in line, we've stopped construction and or are trying to break those leases at this point because, to Jeremy's credit, it's really about cash flow management right now. And that for me, and I think Nicole echoed on this too, is probably the hardest part. Like, I think the financial part is what it is. You know, the numbers have to work themselves out and they sort of tell a story, but people in the hospitality business are aware of our numbers, but we're in this for so much bigger of a purpose in life. Like, we are people pleasers. We like to make people happy. we love to build great teams. We're sort of this organized chaos, this dysfunctional family, and we've kind of ripped the family apart a little bit. And so it's not just work for a lot of people in this business. It's passion and it's industry. And this is our extended family. And we've kind of, had to break a lot of hearts. I mean, worst week of work I've ever had, you know, telling people at Optimo, you know, we have a family meal every day at 1:30. And I was in these strategy meetings for Snooze, how we were going to do these layoffs. And then I brought my whole team in for a family meal at Optimo. I looked them in the eyes. I told them what we needed to do. You just are like, dude, what did I sign up for? This job sucks right now. And it did, until, you know, you realize that failing is still not an option and that you still have to make this thing survive. And so the best thing I can do is sustain this through the next course of whatever that is to get all these people back. And Nicole, you put that so beautifully. I think it's so hard. Like in March, I could have told you what my September numbers are going to be. And I probably could have told you what my October labor is going to be. I probably could have told you how much I was going to pay back investors in November. And now I have no clue what my June looks like. And that starts in 2 weeks. And so getting to that point has been really a journey for me, I would say, as somebody who's ambitious and aggressive and competitive and thoughtful about the strategies to get to this moment. And now I just have to make sure I can pay rent when when it's due. So I think I've had to get comfortable with my own skin and my own bandwidth to know that that's just sort of my journey. I love the transparency again that Nicole shares with her team. We try to do the same thing, because W graphs and V graphs of economy going back, like, we don't know. I don't think we know. And so I'm not going to pretend to know. But I'm going to hustle to make sure that this week and next week I'm going to be able to pay these people that are still here. I kept 5 of my managers at 66%. We're all sitting down, kind of doing a little bit of everything at this moment. And has there been silver linings in this? Man, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you that online ordering and the kits that have come through Snooze, the creativity of our branding and marketing team is the best I've ever seen it at Snooze right now. I mean, they're doing Sunday brunches and DJ kits and online stuff that, you know, Zoom people, 2,000 people sitting around eating brunch, listening to 80s music. Like, that wasn't happening 3 months ago. That's amazing. For Mother's Day, our biggest day of the year, New Year's Day and Mother's Day, we put together these kits. We sold over 40,000 of them throughout the 26 restaurants that are available. Like, that business didn't exist 3 months ago. Obviously, mimosa kits are running out the door. Bloody Mary kits you've never seen in retail and restaurants. Like, it's one of our top 5 sellers right now. So didn't exist 6 months ago. And those little like wins, you know, I'll call them, are helpful, not just financially, but just mentally and morally, to kind of think, okay, I found something new that this will help us out with. And it's the same thing with the winery. Like, similar to these guys, I have an event space I'm sitting right now that can do a 90-person party, 60-person sit down, and that revenue is gone. A majority of my business is really selling wine in restaurants. We had accomplished 150 restaurants before we opened. That business is gone. Retail is okay, you know, like, we hustled into a few Argonauts and Applejacks of the world, but they don't take any more new products. You have to be Kendall Jackson or Behringer to be on the front lines of how they display liquor. So it's helping us. You know, the biggest thing that's kind of paying our bills is this new direct-to-consumer model. Didn't exist 6 months ago or 3 months ago. But I'll tell you that I'm delivering 8 lasagnas and 6-packs today. We did the same thing to Colorado Springs a couple days ago. And so in this weird, awkward way, like, this hustle is back on to when, like, I first started Snooze in 06, and we were in the worst neighborhood in the States, and we were doing $500 a day, but failing wasn't an option. So you just had to keep hustling and hustling and hustling. And I've surrounded myself with people that are hustlers. Positivity is always their top 5 biggest strength. And we lock arms with sort of our own moral compass of, you know, adaptability. We trust each other. We're optimistic, because we have to be, because we still need to be here in September, even though I can't tell you how we're exactly going to get there. So, well, that still scares me. I'm over being scared about it. I'm just going to get it done, if that makes sense. And so I have great conversations with people in the industry like Jeremy and like Nicole, who really can sort of empathize with this, like, oh my God, what just happened? And we still got to go make it happen, if that makes sense. Because again, I think it's more than just the business side of it. We provide a hospitality. Think about that in the world. There's nothing greater in the world than feeling wonderful, and that emotional connection that we all strive to go for, that emotional, equity, that's why we're in the game. Like, otherwise I'd just go be a mortgage broker, do something 9 to 5, way easier. This job we love, and that's why we're into it. And so we can't let this window of life stop that. We just have to sort of pivot to do it better somehow, however that looks on the other side.
Yeah. Our mortgage brokers are pretty busy right now, so they may not agree with that statement. But, John, I appreciate you mentioning the hustle, because the hustle is real right now, right? It's something that I think no matter the industry, people have to get creative and think on their feet and shift quickly. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I also like that you talk about silver lining. This is difficult, but I know you found some silver lining. Jeremy, I wonder if you would talk about a silver lining that you've maybe found, because I know you've also had some success with the family meals and your Mother's Day, please. But what silver lining have you found? And then Nicole, I also want to hear from you and maybe mesh in with that answer what this looks like for the future of your business. I mean, are you going to continue, John, as you said, are you going to continue to do some of this virtual sales and door-to-door sales if it allows? So Jeremy, talk about silver lining for us, would you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just making sure I'm unmuted. I'll be honest. It's silver is an overstatement. But maybe it's the bronze lining kind of thing. But I run an organization in the hospitality industry. The people tend to move up from line roles within the industry. The sort of traditional background of education and strategic planning skills and things like that is a little hard to come by in people in our industry. And so it often falls to the owner or one or two people in an organization who can really take the time to sit and think strategically and get out of their operational role, because the skill set that you hire for is excellence in operations and logistical planning, but not the high level strategy stuff. So when we want to do strategic planning as a company, it is very difficult to get people to give the time, to give the mind share. Now we got time. And it really has been. We started the first week after the shutdown, 3 days a week meetings on the phone with what if you always wanted to change about occasions, but never had time to think about or do. And it really got people thinking differently and taking on a sense of ownership over what those changes could be. We made a tough decision recently where we only could support one salary in the kitchen, and it was either going to be our executive chef or our sous chef. And we made the decision to part company with our executive chef because we didn't believe that that was the right person to take us forward. So we're now hiring for a new culinary leader for the long term, and we're really excited about that. So there are these good forward-looking changes in process, changes in systems, and hopefully a much broader sense of ownership of how everybody influences outcomes that's coming from this exercise.
Yeah, that's it. That's a good bronze lining. I take that, and thank you for being honest about that. Nicole, what about you? Any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, and similarly, I'll start with more personally. I think my dogs have gotten more walks, and my kids have gotten more home-cooked meals than they have potentially in their lifetime here in the last few weeks. A shift to being at home and being present, from a family perspective for sure. As it relates to business, I do think, when it first happened, it was the, oh my goodness, we can get through that to-do list that we've always, wanted to do, right? All of us as business owners have those. Unfortunately or fortunately, we've stayed busy with, kind of the pivots. And I mentioned briefly the virtual meetings and digital platform. Instead of jumping on to somebody else's, we're building our own. So now we are hiring developers and creating our own platform because we don't see this going away as our industry comes out of it. I think there's a hybrid scenario to what we're seeing now is all virtual, but when people do start to come back, there's going to be a demographic that doesn't feel comfortable in traveling, or the corporate dollars aren't there to send everybody. So there's a hybrid component that'll live on. At least probably through 2021 and potentially, longer if there's scares that continue to happen. So I think we are working harder and longer, whether it's the Zoom, sitting in front of our computers all day. I feel like I'm putting in, more time and more hours, into what we're doing versus having the time to be forward thinking. But I do think the lighting within all of this too is you see the leaders within your company rise up. When mentioning the digital platform, I can tell you I had not much to do with it. There are a few individuals within our company that took on that challenge, right? It's job security for them, but they have become experts themselves and educated themselves on what are we going to build? What is it going to look like? How are we going to deliver this to our clients? How are we going to sell it? So individually within the company, it has been a breath of fresh air where we think as owners, we need to do everything ourselves. We don't, and those individuals have, kind of risen to the top and displayed that they're leaders, and that leadership within the company has been exciting to see that it doesn't have to rest on our shoulders. So we can continue to navigate PPP, which we did receive as well, and how are we going to spend it and work more on that long-term strategy. How are we going to be here, at the end of the year or next year, and they can work on the now and continuing to try to, drive sales and communicate. I will say, our social media team, it's one of our designers, brilliant, from a decor designer, has turned social media guru, educate, taught, pivoted, from that standpoint. So it's fun to see also people wear different hats within the company as well, where you might have thought their strength is in one area, but given the freedom again to lead and the forced creativity, where they're truly shining as well.
I love hearing that, because I think we see that again in all industries, people leading from all different places. And Jeremy, you mentioned that also, in just asking your teams, what special projects can we focus on now? Who wants to get creative? Now's the time. John, I want to send that to you as well and see what you have to say about it. I mean, we have Colorado Civic DNA is something that we have created at the Leadership Foundation, and it's really about our 5 values of leadership, collaboration, inclusivity, responsibility, and shared vision. And when we talk about leadership, it's that we give up power to get things done, right? We lead from anywhere. Anybody can lead at any place. And so, John, I wonder if you have any stories or anecdotes of seeing leadership pop up within your restaurants, and that creativity. And if you could share any moments then where you've seen that leadership really be a force of nature and help move things forward.
Certainly, so many angles of creativity. The whole thing about reinvigorating and finding new paths to do it. I mean, we're actually walking outside today about to think how we're going to open up this piazza, which was a parking lot 2 weeks ago, but now it's going to be a piazza with outdoor seating. And so you just walk through and you think, how do we get 50 people to sit out here comfortably? And then you have another person say, well, what if we threw a movie on the wall and we had a movie night? And then someone else says, well, what if I did live music on Saturdays and I socially distanced from here? And you literally just went from a parking lot to a 50-person sit down for movie nights, Sunday nights, on live music on Saturday nights. And I might be able to do that in 3 weeks. Like, that just came out of walking around this morning, which was awesome. Like, just brilliant to see people turning in a different motion. We're in such a less day-to-day facility enrollment right now. It feels like we kind of all are working at this 20,000 foot level where we're getting to look down on the business a little bit instead of just being so focused in the business. And so with that, I think it releases some creativity. Trying not to work my staff and my team, they're traditional 40, 50 hours, but they're working 25, 30, maybe a little bit more from home just to compensate. And what that's also done for them from the creativity standpoint, so I think showing that we care and that they're getting family time to kind of go through this together, as well as it brings that energy and that thoughtfulness and that creativity back to the winery, to see how we all sort of transpire. Again, with Snooze, the pivoting of the marketing team and creating so many of these live virtual sessions has been just so spectacular. We also have a Snooze Foundation that we put together for all teammates that have suffered, struggles. We have a lot of, I think we've put out over $20,000 in the last 6 months, just people trying to go back to school and get some online learning, and they applied for a scholarship through this. And so, gosh, imagine what's going to come out of that out of 3 or 6 months. You might have some more academics. If they apply it to Snooze, great. If they don't, then we were part of their journey along the way to go to another point in their life, and we'll always still be a firm part of that bridge of their journey, I guess. So that part feels just spectacular. And then again, the moments where we do get to feed the guests and creating or raising a little bit of money and doing some frontline work for the homeless around here especially has been just so rewarding to remember how fortunate we still are through all of this. I mean, it's weird to think. I walk the neighborhood, I think, you know what? Gosh, I'm still okay. I go talk to Italy. They just got released yesterday for the first time to leave their homes. So when I think I'm all confined and I'm restricted, I remember that my friends in Italy have been sitting in a house for 2.5 months. Unless you had a dog, you couldn't even leave it. And if you did, you couldn't do more than 100 feet or you got fined 500 euros. So
Wow.
yeah, you're trying to find perspective, I think, a lot in moments like this.
No, that's good. And your Piazza stories sound great. I'll be there for a movie night. I think that's exactly the example I'm looking for, right? Is people are just coming up with ideas. I don't know if it's because, like you had mentioned, Nicole, it's that forced creativity and, we want to keep our jobs. What else can we do to help? And wherever it's coming from, it's happening, and it's at least fun to watch. I want to give a shout out to Laura Smedley in the chat function just for sharing a resource that she's familiar with. So I do encourage everybody to check out that chat feature and see what she's mentioning there. I want to ask a question, and Jeremy and I were talking about this before, just about generosity during crisis and what that involves. And Jeremy, I would love for you to speak a little bit more about this, but right now we're all expected to be so generous and really help others in any way we can, when in fact, not everybody can do that. And so I want to get your perspective on that, Jeremy, and talk to a little bit more about what we talked about before.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And John said it best. People in our industry, we're pleasers. We're people pleasers. We want to be liked. We want to be thought of as doing the right thing. And so early on in this crisis, I was reading a lot, things that would come up in my social media feed, even the revered Harvard Business School press, where you had people saying that what good leadership means during a time like this is being more generous than ever before, and that you've got to bend over backwards to say yes to customers and bend over backwards to say yes to employees. And that's how you demonstrate your compassion as a leader. And, it is my unique perspective or the chair that I sit in because of the story that I told, that all I could react was, what an extraordinary expression of privilege that advice represents. So, to me, as a leader of any organization, your primary responsibility is you've got to preserve the corpus of that organization so it can continue to do good things over the long term. And that means making hard decisions. Saying yes is not hard. If the decisions you're making are on the margin and they're reducing your profits, modestly, great. And I think we all do that in normal times as a way of trying to care for people with the bounty that we have as business leaders. But compassionate leadership also means saying no. It means putting your reputation as someone who always does the right thing at risk, because people are going to judge you for holding to your contract, for saying you can't take care of that thing, for having to potentially lay some people off, those kinds of things. And it means picking winners and losers when there are limited resources. So for us, if we had said yes to all the stuff that Harvard and a lot of the sort of general business press was saying we should be doing, we would have closed our doors because we'd be out of money right now. And so I think there is a lot more nuance to this notion of compassionate leadership, and it has really forced me to examine that. And it has been an area of kinship across the industry as I have had conversations with others around the country and in our market about the tough ways that they're navigating those things. And I want to say I'm so thankful for and proud of my business leader peers around the industry, not around the industry, but around the community, who do have the resources to be extra generous at this time, for choosing to do that. That is absolutely what I would want to be able to do more of, and just can't with my business resources now.
But I think I'm glad that we talked about that and you're bringing that up, because not everybody can be expected to do that. Not everybody is able to, and you have to prioritize what's priority, frankly. And I think that's fair to say, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because we do what we can, and it doesn't always mean saying yes or giving what you can. But we've had a lot of these conversations, and it's that balance of reality and optimism and doing what you can and being realistic about the situation. And and I thank you for being honest about that, because not everybody can give as much, and you give where you can. And Jeremy, I personally know how committed you are to the community. So in a time like this, you know, this is why the Colorado Event Alliance is around, right? This is why you've built a strong community of customers, so that it's our turn now to help your industry and you all, and not make you feel like you have to keep up this reputation of giving and doing for all. So thank you for being vulnerable about that. Nicole, did you have something to add? It looks like you unmuted.
Yeah, I was gonna just add too, I think in our industry, you know, yes, it's hard to give in dollars. But again, back to that hospitality nature, we give in time. We give in our expertise, and you know, for us, we started a town hall series where we felt we are, you know, very connected, and you know, throughout North America, and partners of ours even, you know, over in Europe. So we felt like we even had more of a glimpse into potentially what was going to happen. Although I was in denial when my friend in Italy was saying, I'm like, your school closed and you can't go to the grocery store? Oh, that'll never happen here, right? Here we are. But I feel like we were, you know, very connected, and potentially, you know, resourceful, where we attempted to, with a series of town hall conversations that we've been doing twice a week now for the last 8 weeks, help, you know, potentially those smaller mom and pop establishments, or the individual gig worker or guitarist, you know, help to provide them some perspective and guidance as they navigate PPP, you know, be a voice within our community as well. Holding those meetings, anything from having an executive of Caesars say, you know, here's what Caesars Hotels, you know, is looking like, to a panel of meeting planners, you know, almost, I hate to say, the harsh reality of potentially things aren't coming back, but wanting, you know, the smaller companies and individuals to hear that. So they're not wondering and waiting, and sharing, again, in that transparency, sharing as much as we know with everyone, so they can make educated decisions. And although hard to hear, better now than, you know, kind of navigating in the dark, and not knowing when things are going to bounce back, or maybe having some hope that potentially isn't out there currently for our industry.
Mm-hmm. Nicole, I wonder if you could expand also. Earlier we talked about virtual conferences and what those have looked like and how you've shifted. How have you done that? What have these virtual offerings look like for you guys? And are they with clients? Are people hiring you to do this? If you could just, I mean, I'm personally curious. I hope others might be, but what does that look like?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I will say we partner with National Jewish, and we do their Beau Arts Ball every year in February, which is a big grand event. Producing, you know, custom entertainment, a cast of 50 plus, costume, makeup, choreography, music. So we have that relationship there. They decided to do a virtual concert, a fundraising benefit. So we were able to produce that for them virtually. We had One Republic and Lumineers and Michael Franti and they were able to raise money. So that was our first step into the world of virtual. Super successful. As well. I think they had folks that viewed from across the world as we broadcast that within our platform. And we're doing anything, again, from helping to facilitate a company's Zoom call, right? The meeting planner doesn't want the responsibility to run and navigate the chat or this or that. So companies are hiring us to do that, as well as, you know, completely brand a platform where they can have sponsors and speakers and breakout rooms. We're working on one now with a franchise organization where we'll actually do some live. We'll create a studio for them as the numbers that can gather. You know, right now keeping it within 10, but building a platform where they can broadcast live, but then navigating, again, the audience that they're wanting to talk to. So anything from a panel conversation to a general session. In that element, they want to do breakouts. So almost like a little trade show where they have breakout rooms with 15 different sponsors, and we'll navigate putting people into those breakout rooms to have those one-on-one appointments. We've done trivia as well. So doing trivia, we'll do them as happy hours. Again, our hotel partners. We've done them for, again, kind of that individual gig worker. In our world, we call them trip directors, or like the on-site staff, again, for them to feel connected. The concert element, panel discussions. So really, you know, anything that you could do live. We're also looking at the ability, you know, I think in the part of reason why we go to events is that networking. So what does that reception look like? We've done cooking demonstrations as well, where we've had chefs on, and we've sent kits out to individuals in advance with the ingredients to cook, or a mixology class. So just I think the options are endless. So if somebody's like, we used to do this, what can we do now to still keep our audience engaged, or to, you know, entertain clients? You know, would love to have those conversations and continue. I think that's the stuff that gets us excited. If anybody's familiar with an incentive trip, where somebody wins a trip to Hawaii, we've talked with a couple, you know, major insurance providers of how do we do a virtual incentive? Are we creating, you know, really cool, unique experiences with a celebrity chef or with a celebrity entertainer? They're still at home, but they're getting, you know, potentially an experience that you would never get, you know, outside of this time. The entertainers also, you know, booking headline acts now to come in and entertain on a virtual conference has now also become a little bit more feasible. Where, you know, those acts that maybe were $500,000 or $1 million also want to get some money to their crews that aren't on the road at concerts. So everything's come down a little bit for now. We'll see where it navigates, but lots of possibilities.
There are a lot. I went to my first virtual event on Friday. It was a Project Pave lunch, and it was fun. It was fun to see who was there and how they were combining social, you know, and all the chat features and everything. It was pretty interesting. And on that note, Elisa Berzins has a great point in the chat function as well, just to remind people to stay in touch with their event organizers. And so I encourage you to go read that, what she mentioned there as well. I want to start wrapping with asking each of you a question, and just ask you to think about, you know, in these tough times. John, I'm going to start with you, and then Jeremy, move to you, and then Nicole, finally you. But what can we as your leadership community, the alumni of the Leadership Foundation, what can we do to help you right now? I mean, we'll put that link in there again to coloradoeventalliance.org or coeventalliance.org. But John, what can we do to help you right now? Other than me coming and getting some wine and lasagna. Tell us how we should be thinking differently and helping this industry move forward.
I guess, sure, the obvious one is go support your local restaurants, winery. I want to say that community is probably more important now, I feel like, than ever. So buying local, supporting local, participating local is huge. Like every meal, every event you book can bring back a teammate or two. So think about it as something, as a function. You need to eat, we need to serve, and we want to bring these people back. So it's as simple as that for me. And then certainly the collaboration of the city baffles me. Like I, grew up here. It was made fun of Cowtown. I couldn't wait to leave Denver because it was just too small. And now I'm back just thriving in a incredibly progressive, creative, culinary driven, sustainably minded, healthy environment. So continuing to participate with events and with great leaders like this, and just hearing your questions, but also sharing and collaborating on these ideas, and just the way you reach out, we reach back, is also appreciated. So as simple as ordering a few meals a week from your local restaurants is really, really helpful. And at the same time, continue to progress little meetings and sessions like this, because this is what the community needs. This is as much for me to learn what you guys are doing and asking your questions, as much as it is to try to provide some information. So, and really, again, thank you for letting me hang out with Jeremy and Nicole. I've learned a lot, and I respect you a great amount, and I know that we'll continue to lock arms and move our way through this.
Thank you, John. And I'll really quickly, Jeremy, before you go, I think we heard some great advice from, I think, one of your friends also, John, Jim Litko, who said we should be going out of our way to support local companies, if you can, right? So choose to get food from a local restaurant instead of one of the box stores. So I think that goes in with what you're saying, John. So thank you. Jeremy, what about you? What can we do to help your industry?
Well, I want to quickly echo the buy local thing, and that's a big decision that Denver is going to have to make. Denver is not a company that promotes buy local. It is real, and that's part of what's fueled its growth. That there's been a lot of national organizations that have moved in and thrived and helped us build our economy and been great employers. And so the choices among local and national have trade-offs. But there is a rising effort around buy local, and so as members of the community, being supportive of that notion. It's bigger than just your own purchasing decisions. And it's bigger than just B2C purchasing decisions. It's also B2B purchasing decisions. Even if you work for a large organization, to support local businesses that can support you. So that wasn't on my list of 3, but I appreciate John's nod to that one. And this one might seem a little counterintuitive too, but amid this national clamor over, is COVID a hoax? Is it the greatest threat of our generation? The only way we are all going to get back to business safe, or get back to business sustainably in the hospitality industry, is if we do it safely and on a steady path. And so, what I would ask is that when the time does come to gather again, think of the safety of others first, because that's more in control than your own safety is. And the strategy will help us gather safely, which will normalize the notion of gathering again. We all miss being able to get with our friends and our family, to run into people we know in the community, good friends who are on this call. I'm so sorry we're not in the same room together. And so making smart decisions that help fuel the path towards getting us back to what we all think of as normal is really important. Remember that the hospitality industry in general is the largest employer in the United States, and people, need your help. They need your patronage. They need your support and thoughts. And this is not the last time that people in the hospitality industry are going to face hardship. There are people who are at the bottom of the scale in so many ways. And so whether it's policy considerations, whether it's your philanthropy, remembering that people who are on the economic margins suffer the most, and looking for ways to be helpful. And then, you could certainly order a meal from Occasions to put in your freezer and help feed your family. You've got to be tired of cooking.
No doubt about it. So my husband did just get a new smoker, so that's been fun for me. Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate that. And Nicole, right before you go, I just want to call out Katie Dell in the chat function, just had a great thought. For all those restaurants and businesses that have donated to you for a silent auction, consider giving back to them. So thank you, Katie, for that. Nicole, the last thought from you on how we can help?
I would say and I'll echo, Jeremy and John as well, in terms of, thank you for having us and allowing us to share our stories today. In addition to the local, I would say the campaign within our industry is postpone, don't cancel. Even if you can't postpone to this year, simply don't cancel, or explore, again, something creative to be able to have that event virtually. And you think of potentially the face painter or the DJ, the solo guitarist, anywhere that you can still employ or utilize their services. Similarly, it's another mouth to feed, or another person that we can help them sustain and pay their rent, per se. We had a large local corporation that we do their holiday party, and we got the call earlier this week that they're not doing their holiday party. However, and I'll get emotional, they said that they still want to spend that equivalent of dollars with us and support us as a partner. Very touching, yeah. So they are looking to move all of those dollars to our digital services, and they're hiring us on a retainer for the next 6 months to be able to create digital content for them, which was huge. It's not the light at the end of the tunnel. It's such a huge gesture made to us. And then also asked us who in our industry is struggling and how can they continue to support them as well. So it was pretty amazing.
Wow, Nicole.
Yeah.
That is touching. That's it leaves me speechless, honestly. I think that's amazing. And for those that can do that, I mean, wow, what a wonderful, wonderful sign of a partnership for you guys. So I'm glad you were able to experience that. That feels good, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, John, Jeremy, Nicole, thank you so much for your time this morning. I think amazing content, real vulnerability, true thoughts from you guys, and we sure appreciate that. I know the audience does. I'd love to ask the audience as I wrap up to just think about some takeaways that you had from this call and put them in the chat feature. We love to collect your thoughts and what were some takeaways, some learnings that you had. Just start typing furiously in there. We want to see what you've gotten from this call. We sure appreciate that. And I also want to remind you that we did record the session, so if you'd like to share it with others or listen to it later, you're welcome to do that. We will send out an email with our takeaways and kind of high-level responses within the next 48 hours or so. You can also find our blog about this on our website, and future Virtual Voices, you can see what those look like as well. You'll see in the chat feature, our next Virtual Voice is May 28th about creatively coping, how leaders are personally being creative to cope with quarantine and how they're getting through it. So not just from the business perspective, but personally as well. And then finally, before we wrap up, I do want to, again, remind you to put in those one-word takeaways for me, but also, you know, don't forget about us, the Leadership Foundation. We're in recruitment season, and leadership is more important now than ever. And we hope that you'll consider letting others know that the Leadership Foundation programs are still going on, and we would love for you to recruit and send anybody our way that you think might make sense. We have delayed the start of them just to give some time for you to personally consider what this looks like and for your business circumstances. So please do check out our website for what our deadlines are and our program opportunities. But we hope to see you all soon in person or on Zoom. And again, thank you, Nicole, Jeremy, and John. We sure appreciate your time. And thank you, everyone else. Take care.